Chapter 22 July 3 weeks later. It was a beautiful July day, and James came in from school with his shirt sleeves rolled up and sweat glistening on his forehead. "I'm home," he shouted. Zara yelled something back from the kitchen as James cut into the living room. Meatball stood up and padded over with his tail waggling. He'd almost doubled in size since Lauren had chased him around the stables, and while there were various sound reasons for getting rid of the puppy, in the end, nobody had the heart to do it. "Hey, dude," James grinned as he crouched down and swept his hand through the dog's brown and white coat. "You're hot, aren't you? Never mind, you've had both your injections now. You'll be safe to go outside for walkies in another week." Meatball rolled onto his back and let James tickle his belly. "Aren't you a cutie pie?" James smiled. "Where's your ball?" He reached under an armchair and grabbed a pink rubber ball. Meatball knew what this meant and sprang up excitedly as James lobbed the ball behind the sofa. The dog spun around and raced behind the furniture, emerging at the other end with the ball in his mouth. "Aren't you a clever boy?" While Meatball had grasped the idea of fetching a ball, he was less keen on letting go once he had it. As James tried prizing the ball from Meatball's mouth, the little dog narrowed his eyes and growled for all he was worth. "Good boy," James grinned when Meatball finally let go. James leaned in close and stroked the dog, then let him lick his cheek. He couldn't help but love the puppy as he looked into his docile brown eyes. After another lick, James picked Meatball off the carpet and kissed the top of his head. "You're the cutest dog in the world, aren't you?" James said as he stroked Meatball. "Who's a cute doggy?" "He always gets like this with animals when he doesn't have a girlfriend," Lauren said acidly. James glanced up from the floor and saw Stuart, Pierce and Lauren standing in the doorway, giggling. "Hey, Stu," James said. "At least some of us have got girlfriends, eh?" Lauren tutted. "We're just doing homework together." "If you say so, lovebirds," James smirked. Meatball had spent most of the day snoozing in the warm room on his own and couldn't cope with suddenly having 3 people to play with. His tail was in overdrive and he raced back and forth, unable to decide whose attention he wanted. "Are you coming to my room?" Lauren asked as Meatball reared up and rested his front paws against the bottom of her school skirt. "You don't mind, do you, James?" James shrugged. "Nah, I'm going upstairs for a shower. I'm sweating like a pig." "Come on then, Meatball," Lauren said as she leaned across the hall and opened the door of her bedroom. Meatball belted across the hallway and jumped onto Lauren's bed. "You know you shouldn't lick James's face," Lauren said as she stroked the little dog. "You don't want to go catching all his germs." "Hey!" James gasped as he grabbed his pack and headed for the stairs. "I heard that." "Later, James," Lauren grinned as she closed her bedroom door. "You'd better keep those trousers on, Stuart, 'cause I'll kick your ass if you get my little sister pregnant." Lauren stuck her head out of the door and gave her brother the finger. "You just get funnier every day, don't you, James?" After his shower, James trundled down the hallway, wrapped in a towel, and walked into his bedroom. Kyle was on the top bunk, reading a copy of Catch-22, dressed only in a set of beach shorts. "Thank God it's Friday," James huffed as he sat on his bed and grabbed a cleanish pair of cargo shorts off the floor. "How was study leave?" "Not bad," Kyle grinned. "I got up at 10, sunbathed in the garden until noon, and then Tom came over for a couple of hours." James tutted. "Doesn't he have to go to school either? Sixth form is such a DOS." Tom's finished his A-levels and starts uni at the end of September, provided he gets his grades, of course. The hot weather was getting to James, and he broke into a full-on rant. I bloody hate going to stupid lessons at stupid schools where you don't learn anything. It's a gorgeous day, and I had to spend 2 hours sitting in a classroom doing maths. I've done A-level maths, and this wasn't even GCSE. I felt like twanging my idiot classmates around the head and going, "Why are you all so thick?" Kyle laughed. We can't all be mathematical geniuses, James. I worked my balls off to get A-level maths last year and still only scraped a C. So, what did Tom say? No news, really. Sophie and Viv are still putting out feelers to try getting involved with one of the radical groups, but they're all so wary of infiltration that nothing is happening fast. You know what's going to happen, don't you? Me, Kerry and Lauren are scheduled to go on summer holiday at the Cherub hostel together for the first time ever. What's the betting this mission ends up dragging on for months and we miss out? You're a golden beam of sunshine today, aren't you? Kyle grinned. I missed out on summer hostel a few years back, and all for some crummy mission based on a false tip-off about a heroin smuggler. You've been lucky so far, James. All your missions have panned out. Sooner or later, you're going to get one that goes tits up. You reckon this could be it? Kyle shook his head. I'm optimistic, but they reckon the AFM could have as few as a dozen members. We were never likely to unearth a small group like that quickly. I reckon we did well hooking up with Tom and Viv as fast as we did. Guess you're right, James said, feeling slightly happier as he leaned back and put his feet up on his bed. And school finishes next week. This mission's going to be a real DOS once summer holidays start. James felt a lump under his back. He reached beneath his covers and pulled a red and green rugby sock out of the folds in his duvet. It certainly wasn't his, and Kyle wouldn't be seen dead in sportswear. James leapt off his bunk. Kyle, why the hell is your boyfriend's sock inside my bed? Oh, that's where it got to, Kyle said casually. We looked everywhere. Were you and Tom using my bed for, gay stuff? Where else can you sit in this cupboard? You could have used your own bunk, James said indignantly. Kyle moved his hand between the top of his bed and the ceiling. There's less than half a metre between my mattress and the ceiling. Besides, Tom's a big guy. The bunk would probably collapse with both of us up here. So what exactly did you two get up to on my bed? Nothing, Kyle said. We just snuggled up and kissed for a while. After taking your clothes off, James added. Some of our clothes, Kyle said, as he pointed at the sunlight streaming through the window. It's 80 degrees out there. Do you expect us to make out in our overcoats? Look, you and Tom are both over 16. I've got nothing against you being gay and doing whatever the hell you like with each other. Just not on my bed, okay? Kyle jumped down off his bunk and faced James off. You're a total homophobe, he said angrily. No, James said. I've known you're gay for yonks. It's not made the slightest bit of difference between us. You know what? Kyle spluttered. You're the worst kind of homophobe too. I'd prefer it if you just came out and said you didn't like me being gay, instead of being all, oh, it's okay, but secretly turning your nose up behind my back. You're putting words in my mouth, James gasped. All I said was that I didn't want you two romping around half naked on my bed. What's wrong with that? Batman Begins, Kyle said, jabbing his finger against James's chest. We watched it on DVD in your room back at campus. I sat on the floor while everyone else sat on your bed. You were making out with Kerry, Gabriel was making out with Daniel Satter, and Callum was attempting to make out with God knows who. You didn't bat an eyelid, even when Gabriel and Daniel were practically humping each other. Well, James said weakly. It's a total double standard, Kyle said bitterly. If I'd snogged a girl on your bed, you wouldn't have said a word, would you? James realised Kyle was right, but he wasn't prepared to admit it. Just keep your boyfriend off my bed, Kyle. Get stuffed, Kyle said, giving James a shove and heading for the door. Some bloody friend you are. But he didn't get out because Zara was on her way in. Her voice was quiet but furious. I don't know what you two are arguing about, she hissed, but I can overhear you talking about campus downstairs in the kitchen, and in case you haven't noticed, we have a guest in the house. Fortunately, Lauren has had the sense to turn her music on. James gasped. He'd totally forgotten about Stuart. I'm going out for a walk, Kyle said sourly, grabbing a pair of trainers and a t-shirt before heading out of the room. Care to explain what that was all about? Zara asked James once Kyle was downstairs. I found out Kyle and Tom were making out on my bed earlier. I told Kyle I didn't want them doing it again. Did they leave a mess or something? No, just... Zara smiled knowingly. You're uncomfortable because they're gay. James nodded as he remembered why he liked Zara so much. She always understood where you were coming from. I know you're not supposed to have anything against gay people, James explained. I mean, I really like Kyle, but whenever I think about the idea of two guys wanting to shag each other, it just makes me go, ugh. Zara smiled. It's a common reaction, especially amongst teenage boys. Have you ever tried explaining to Kyle how his sexuality makes you feel? James shook his head. No way, he'd freak at me. I'll have a word with him when he comes back, Zara said. Hopefully it'll sound better coming from me. You two are such good mates. It'd be a shame if you fell out. Cheers, James grinned.